Quirrell cursed again. "Get out of the way," he said. As Harry moved aside, he felt the sorcerer's stone against his leg. Dare he make a break for it? But he hadn't walked 5 paces before a high voice spoke through. Quirrell wasn't moving his lips. "He lies, he lies. Potter, come back here," Quirrell shouted. "Tell me the truth. What did you just see?" The high voice spoke again. "Let me speak to him face to face." "Master, you are not strong enough." "I have strength enough for this." Harry felt as if Devil's Snare was rooting him to the spot. He couldn't move a muscle. Petrified, he watched as Quirrell reached up and began to unwrap his turban. What was going on? The turban fell away. Quirrell's head looked strangely small without it. Then he turned slowly on the spot. Harry would have screamed, but he couldn't make a sound. Where there should have been a back to Quirrell's head, there was a face. The most terrible face Harry had ever seen. It was chalk white with glaring red eyes and slits for nostrils like a snake. "Harry Potter," it whispered. Harry tried to take a step backward, but his legs wouldn't move. "See what I have become," the face said. "Mere shadow and vapor. I have form only when I can share another's body. But there have always been those willing to let me into their hearts and minds. Unicorn blood has strengthened me these past weeks. You saw faithful Quirrell drinking it for me in the forest, and once I have the elixir of life, I will be able to create a body of my own. Now why don't you give me that stone in your pocket?" So he knew. The feeling suddenly surged back into Harry's legs. He stumbled backward. "Don't be a fool," snarled the face. "Better save your own life and join me, or you will meet the same end as your parents. They died begging me for mercy." "Liar," Harry shouted suddenly. Quirrell was walking backward at him so that Voldemort could still see him. The evil face was now smiling. "How touching it is. I always value bravery. Yes, boy, your parents were brave. I killed your father first, and he put up a courageous fight, but your mother need not have died. She was trying to protect you. Now give me the stone, unless you want her to have died in vain." "Never." Harry sprang towards the flame door, but Voldemort screamed, "Seize him!" And the next door, Harry felt Quirrell's hand close on his wrist. At once a needle-sharp pain seared across Harry's scar. His head felt as though it was about to split into two. He yelled, struggling with all his might, and to his surprise, Quirrell let go of him. The pain in his head lessened. He looked around wildly to see where Quirrell had gone and saw him punched in pain. Looking at his fingers, they were blistering before his eyes. Seize him, shrieked Voldemort again, and Quirrell lunged, knocking Harry clean off his feet. Landing on top of him, both hands around Harry's neck, Harry's scar was almost blinding him with pain, yet he could see Quirrell howling in agony. "Master, I cannot hold him. My hands, my hands." And Quirrell, though pinning Harry to the ground with his knees, let go of his neck and stared, bewildered at his own palms. Harry could see they looked burned, raw, red, and shiny. "Then kill him, fool, and be done," screeched Voldemort. Quirrell raised his hand to perform a deadly curse, but Harry by instinct reached up and grabbed Quirrell's face. Arg! Quirrell rolled off him, his face blistering too, and then Harry knew Quirrell couldn't touch his bare skin, not without suffering terrible pain. His only chance was to keep hold of Quirrell, keep him in enough pain to stop him from doing a curse. Harry jumped to his feet, caught Quirrell by the arm, and hung on as tight as he could. Quirrell screamed and tried to throw Harry off, but the pain in Harry's head was building. He couldn't see, he could only hear Quirrell's terrible shrieks and Voldemort's yell of kill him, and other voices maybe in Harry's own head crying, "Harry, Harry." He felt Quirrell's arm wrenched from his grasp, knew all was lost, and fell into blackness down. Something gold was glinting just above him. The snitch. He tried to catch it, but his arms were too heavy. He blinked. It wasn't the snitch at all. It was a pair of glasses. How strange. He blinked again. The smiling face of Albus Dumbledore swam into view above him. "Good afternoon, Harry," said Dumbledore. Harry stared at him. Then he remembered, "Sir, the stone." It was Quirrell. He got the stone. "Sir, quick. Calm yourself, dear boy. You are a little behind the times," said Dumbledore. "Quirrell does not have the stone." "Then who does?" "Sir, I." "Harry, please relax, or Madame Pomfrey will have me thrown out." Harry swallowed and looked around him. He realized he must be in the hospital wing. He was lying in a bed with white linen sheets. Next to him was a table piled high with what looked like half the candy shop. Tokens from your friends and admirers, said Dumbledore, beaming. What happened down in the dungeons between you and Professor Quirrell is a complete secret, so naturally the whole school knows. I believe your friends Misters Fred and George Weasley were responsible for trying you to send you a toilet seat. No doubt that they thought it would amuse you. Madame Pomfrey, however, felt it might not be very hygienic and confiscated it. How long have I been in here? 3 days. Mr. Ronald Weasley and Mr. Granger will be most relieved you have come around. They have been extremely worried. But, sir, the stone, I see you are not to be distracted. Very well, the stone. Professor Quirrell did not manage to take it from you. I arrived in time to prevent that. Although you were doing very well on your own, I must say, you got there. You got Hermione's owl. We must have crossed in mid-air. No sooner had I reached London than it became clear to me that the place I should be was the one I had just left. I arrived just in time to pull Quirrell off you. It was you. I feared I might be too late. You nearly were. I couldn't have kept him off the stone much longer. Not the stone, boy. You. The effort involved nearly killed you. For one terrible moment there, I was afraid it had. As for the stone, it has been destroyed. Destroyed, said Harry blankly. But your friend Nicholas Flamel, oh, you know about Nicholas, said Dumbledore, sounding quite delighted. You didn't do the thing properly, didn't you? Well, Nicholas and I have had a little chat and agreed it's all for the best. But that means he and his wife will die, won't they? They have enough elixirs stored to set their affairs in order, and then, yes, they will die. Dumbledore smiled at the look of amazement on Harry's face. To one as young as you, I am sure it seems incredible, but to Nicholas and Perennial, it really is like going to bed after a very, very long day. After all, to the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure. You know, the stone was really not such a wonderful thing. As much money and life as you could want, the two things most human beings would choose above all. The trouble is, humans do have a knack of choosing precisely those things that are worst for them. Harry lay there, lost for words. Dumbledore hummed a little and smiled at the ceiling. Harry said, Sir, said Harry, I have been thinking, sir, even if the stone's gone, Voldemort, I mean, you know who, call him Voldemort. Harry always used the proper name for things. Fear of a name increases fear of the thing itself. Yes, sir. Well, Voldemort's going to try other ways of coming back, isn't he? I mean, he hasn't gone, has he? No, Harry, he has not. He is still out there somewhere, perhaps looking for another body to share. Not being truly alive, he cannot be killed. He left Quirrell to die. He shows just as little mercy to his followers as his enemies. Nevertheless, Harry, while you may only have delayed his return to power, it will merely take someone else who is prepared to fight what is delayed again and again. Why, he may never return to power. Harry nodded but stopped quickly because it made his head hurt. Then he said, Sir, there are some other things I did like to know. If you can tell me things I want to know the truth about. The truth, Dumbledore sighed. It is a beautiful and terrible thing and should therefore be treated with great caution. However, I shall answer your questions unless I have a very good reason not to, in which case I beg you will forgive me. I shall not, of course, lie. Well, Voldemort said that he only killed my mother because she tried to stop him from killing me. But why would he want to kill me in the first place? Dumbledore sighed very deeply this time. Alas, the first thing you asked me, I cannot tell you. Not today, not now. You will know one day. Put it from your mind for now, Harry. When you are older, I know you hate to hear this. When you are ready, you will know. And Harry knew it would be not good to argue, but why wouldn't Quirrell touch me? Your mother died to save you. If there is one thing Voldemort cannot understand, it is love. He didn't realize that love, as powerful as your mother's for you, leaves its own mark, not a scar, no visible sign. To have been loved so deeply, even though the person who loved us is gone and will give us some protection forever. It is in your very skin. Quirrell, full of hatred, greed, and ambition, sharing his soul with Voldemort, could not touch you for this reason. It was agony to touch a person marked by something so good. Dumbledore now became very interested in a bird out on the Windsor Hill, which gave Harry time to dry his eyes on the sheet. When he had found his voice again, Harry said, And the invisibility clock, do you know who sent it to me? Ah, your father happened to leave it in my possession, and I thought you might like it. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. Useful things. Your father used it mainly for sneaking off to the kitchens to steal food when he was here. And there is something else. Fire away. Quirrell said Snape. Professor Snape, Harry. Yes, him. Quirrell said he hates me because he hated my father. Is that true? Well, they did rather detest each other, not unlike yourself and Mr. Malfoy, and then your father did something Snape could never forgive. What? He saved his life. What? Yes, said Dumbledore dreamily. Funny, the way people's mind work, isn't it? Professor Snape couldn't bear bearing in your father's death. I do believe he worked so hard to protect you this year because he felt that would make him and your father even. Then he could go back to hating your father's memory in peace. Harry tried to understand this, but it made his head pound, so he stopped. And sir, there's one more thing, just the one. How did I get the stone out of the mirror? And now I'm glad you asked me that. It was one of my most brilliant ideas, and between you and me, that's saying something. You see, only who wanted to find the stone find it, but not use it, wouldn't be able to get it. Otherwise, they did just see themselves making gold or drinking elixir of life. My brain surprises even me sometimes. Now, enough questions. I suggest you make a start on these sweets. Bertie boss every flavor beans. I was unfortunate enough in my youth to come across a vomit flavored one, and since then, I'm afraid I have rather lost my liking for them. But I think I will be safe with a nice toffee, don't you? He smiled and popped the golden brown bean into his mouth. Then he choked and said, Alex, alas, earwax, Madame Pomfrey, the nurse was a nice woman but very strict. With just 5 minutes, Harry pleaded. Absolutely not. You let Professor Dumbledore in. Well, of course, that was the headmaster. Quite different. You need rest. I am resting. Look, lying down and everything. Oh, go on, Madame Pomfrey. Oh, very well, she said, but 5 minutes only. And she let Ron and Hermione in. Hermione looked ready to fling her arms around him again, but Harry was glad she held herself in as his head and was still very sore. Oh, Harry, we were sure you were going to. Dumbledore was so worried. The whole school talking about it, said Ron. What really happened? It was one of those rare occasions when the true story is even more stranger and exciting than the wild rumors. Harry told them everything: Quirrell, the mirror, the stone, and the Voldemort. Ron and Hermione were a very good audience. They gasped in all the right places, and when Harry told them that what was under Quirrell's turban, Hermione screamed out loud. So the stone's gone, said Ron finally. Flamel's just going to die. That's what I said, but Dumbledore thinks that what was it? It to the well-organized mind that is but the next great adventure. I always said he was off his rocker, said Ron, looking quite impressed at how crazy his hero was. So what happened to you too? Said Harry. Well, I got back all right, said Hermione. I brought Ron around. That took a while. When we were dashing up to the owlery to contact Dumbledore, when we met him in the entrance hall, he already knew. He just said Harry's gone after him, hasn't he? And hurtled off to the third floor. Did you think he meant you to do it? Said Ron, sending you your father's cloak and everything. Well, Hermione exploded. If he did, I mean to say that's terrible. You could have been killed. No, it isn't," said Harry thoughtfully. He's a funny man, Dumbledore. I think he sort of wanted to give me a chance. I think he knows more or less everything that goes on here. I reckon he had a pretty good idea we were going to try, and instead of stopping us, he just taught us enough to help. I don't think it was an accident. He let me find out how the mirror worked. It's almost like he thought I had the right to face Voldemort if I could. Yeah, Dumbledore off his rocker. All right, said Ron proudly. Listen, you have got to be up for the end of year feast tomorrow. The points are all in, and Slytherin won. Of course, you missed the last Quidditch match. We were steamrolled by Ravenclaw without you, but the food will be good. At that moment, Madame Pomfrey bustled over. You have had nearly 15 minutes now. Out, she said firmly. After a good night's sleep, Harry felt nearly back to normal. I want to go to the feast, he told Madame Pomfrey as he straightened his many candy boxes. I can't I? Professor Dumbledore says you are to be allowed to go, she said sniffly, as though in her opinion Professor Dumbledore didn't realize how risky feast could be. And you have another visitor. Oh, good, said Harry. Who is it? Hagrid sidled through the door as he spoke. As usual, when he was indoors, Hagrid looked too big to be allowed. He sat down next to Harry, took one look at him, and burst into tears. It's all my Rudy fault. He sobbed in his face in his hands. I told the evil git how to get past Fluffy. I told him it was the only thing he didn't know, and I told him you could have died all for a dragon egg. I will never drink again. I should be chucked out and made to life as a muggle. Hagrid, said Harry, shocked to see Hagrid shaking with grief and remorse, great tears leaking down into his beard. Hagrid, he did have found somehow. This is Voldemort we are talking about. He did have found out even if you hadn't told him. You could have died, sobbed Hagrid, and don't say the name. Voldemort, Harry bellowed, and Hagrid was so shocked he stopped crying. I have met him and I am calling him by his name. Please cheer up, Hagrid. We saved the stone, it's gone. He can't use it. I have a chocolate frog, I have got loads. Hagrid wiped his nose on the back of his hand and said, That's remind me I've got you a present. It's not a toast sandwich, is it? Said Harry anxiously, and at last Hagrid gave a weak chuckle. Now Dumbledore gave me the day off yesterday to fix it. Curse. He should have sacked me instead. Anyway, got you this. It seemed to be a handsome leather-covered book. Harry opened it curiously. It was full of wizard photographs. Smiling and waving at him from every page were his mother and father. Sent owls off to all your parents, all school friends asking for photos. Knew you didn't have any. Did you like it? Harry couldn't speak, but Hagrid understood. Harry made his way down to the end of the year feast alone that night. He had been held up by Madame Pomfrey fussing about, insisting on giving him one last checkup, so the great hall was already full. It was decked out in the Slytherin colors of green and silver to celebrate Slytherin winning the House Cup for the 7th year in a row. A huge banner showing the Slytherin serpent covered the wall behind the high table. When Harry walked in, there was a sudden hush, and then everybody started talking loudly at once. He slipped into a seat when between Harry and Hermione at the Gryffindor table and tried to ignore the fact that people were standing up to look at him. Fortunately, Dumbledore arrived moments later. The babble died away. Another year gone, Dumbledore said cheerfully, and I must trouble you with an old man's wheezing waffle before we sink our teeth into a delicious feast. What a year it has been. Hopefully, your heads were all a little fuller than they were. You have the whole summer ahead to get them nice and empty before next year starts. Now, as I understand it, the House Cup here needs awarding, and the points stand thus. In 4th place, Gryffindor with 312 points. In 3rd, Hufflepuff with 350 points. 52 points. Ravenclaw has 426 and Slytherin 472. A storm of cheering and stamping broke out from the Slytherin table. Harry could see Draco Malfoy banging his goblet on the table. It was a sickening night. Yes, well done, Slytherin, said Dumbledore. However, recent events must be taken into account. The room went very still. The Slytherin smiles faded a little. Ahem, said Dumbledore. I have a few last-minute points to dish out. Let me see. Yes. First to Mr. Ronald Weasley. Ron went purple in the face. He looked like a radish with a bad sunburn. For the best played game of chess Hogwarts has seen in many years, I award Gryffindor House 50 points. Gryffindor cheers nearly raised the bewitched ceiling. The stars overhead seemed to quiver. Percy could be heard telling the other prefects, my brother, you know, my youngest brother, got past McGonagall's giant chess yet. Said. At last there was silence again. Second to Miss Hermione Granger for the use of cool logic in the face of fire. I award Gryffindor House 50 points. Hermione buried her face in her arms. Harry strongly suspected she had burst into tears. Gryffindors up and down the table were beside themselves. They were 100 points up. Third to Mr. Harry Potter, said Dumbledore. The room went dead quietly. For pure nerve and outstanding courage, I award Gryffindor House 60 points. The din was deafening. Those who could add up while yelling themselves hoarse knew that Gryffindor now had 472 points, exactly the same as Slytherin. They had tied for the House Cup if only Dumbledore had given Harry just one more point. Dumbledore raised his hand. The room gradually fell silent. There are all kinds of courage, said Dumbledore, smiling. It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to our enemies, but just as much to stand up to our friends. I therefore award 10 points to Mr. Neville Longbottom. Someone standing outside the Great Hall might well have thought some sort of explosion had taken place, so loud was the noise that erupted from Gryffindor table. Harry, Ron, and Hermione stood up to yell and cheer as Neville, white with shock, disappeared under a pile of people hugging him. He had never won so much as a point for Gryffindor before. Harry, still cheering, nudged Ron in the ribs and pointed at Malfoy, who couldn't have looked more stunned and horrified if he did just had the body bind curse put on him. Which means Dumbledore called over the storm of applause, for even Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff were celebrating the downfall of Slytherin. We need a little change of decoration. He clapped his hands. In an instant, the green hangings became scarlet and the silver became gold. The used Slytherin serpent vanished and a towering Gryffindor lion took its place. Snap was shaking before McGonagall's hand with a horrible forced smile. He caught Harry's eye, and Harry knew at once that Snape's feelings towards him hadn't changed one jot. This didn't worry Harry. It seemed as though life would be back to normal next year, or as normal as it ever was at Hogwarts. It was the best evening of Harry's life, better than winning at Quidditch or Christmas or knocking out mountain trolls. He would never ever forget tonight. Harry had almost forgotten that the exam results were still to come, but come they did. To their great surprise, both he and Ron passed with good marks. Hermione, of course, had the best grades of the first years. Even Neville scrapped through his good herbology mark, making up for his abysmal potions won. They had hoped that Goyle, who was almost as stupid as he was mean, might be thrown out, but he had passed too. It was a shame, but as Ron said, you couldn't have everything in life. And suddenly their wardrobes were empty, their trunks were packed. Neville's toad was found lurking in a corner of the toilets. Notes were handed out to all students warning them not to use magic over the holidays. I always hope they will forget to give us these, said Fred Weasley sadly. Hagrid was there to take them down to the fleet of boats that sailed across the lake. They were boarding the Hogwarts Express, talking and laughing as the countryside became greener and tidier, eating Bertie Bott's every flavor beans as they sped past Muggle towns, pulling off their wizard robes and putting on jackets and coats, pulling into platform 9 and 3 quarters at King's Cross station. It took quite a while for them to all to get off the platform. A wizened old guard was up by the ticket barrier, letting them go through the gate in twos and threes so they didn't attract attention by all bursting out by a solid wall at once and alarming the muggles. You must come and stay this summer, said Ron. Both of you, I will send you an owl. Thanks, said Harry. I will need something to look forward to. People jostled them as they moved forward towards the gateway back to the Muggle world. Some of them called, "Bye, Harry. See you, Potter. Still famous," said Ron, grinning at him. "Not where I am going, I promise you," said Harry. He, Ron, and Hermione passed through the gateway together. There he is, Mum. There he is. Look. It was Ginny Weasley, Ron's younger sister, but she wasn't pointing at Ron. Harry Potter, she squealed. "Look, Mum, I can see." "Be quiet, Ginny, and it's rude to point." Mrs. Weasley smiled down at them. "Busy here," she said. "Very," said Harry. "Thanks for the fudge and the sweater, Mrs. Weasley." "Oh, it was nothing, dear. Ready are you?" It was Uncle Vernon, still purple face, still mustache, still looking furious at the nerve of Harry carrying an owl in a cage in a station full of ordinary people. Behind him stood Aunt Petunia and Dudley, looking terrified at the very sight of Harry. "You must be Harry's family," said Mrs. Weasley. "In a manner of speaking," said Uncle Vernon. "Hurry up, boy, we haven't got all day." He walked away. Harry hung back for a last word with Ron and Hermione. "See you over the summer then. Hope you have a good holiday," said Hermione, looking uncertainly after Uncle Vernon, shocked that anyone could be so unpleasant. "Oh, I will," said Harry, and they were surprised at the grin that was spreading over his face. "They don't know we are not allowed to use magic at home. I am going to have a lot of fun with Dudley this summer."